4 and 5. So let's take a look at 4. So 4, there's no coefficient with the squared term, so that coefficient is going to be 1. So my A is equal to 1, my B is equal to -5, and my C is equal to 2. So now I'm ready to calculate out the quadratic formula. So to do that, I get x is equal to the opposite of b. Well, since b is a -5, I'm going to put a +5. Plus or minus the square root, and when I write -5, I always write it in parentheses to make sure my calculator does it right. Minus 4 times a times c. All of that over 2 times a. So now, again, I want to go ahead and simplify underneath the radical. So I'm going to simplify this part out first. So I get 5 plus or minus the square root, and now I'm going to do -5 squared. Remember, use those parentheses in your calculator, minus 4 times 1 times 2. And when you do that, you end up with 17. All of that divided by 2. So now I'm ready to create my positive and my negative versions. So let's do positive first. So we're going to do 5 plus the square root of 17. We're going to type all of that in and hit enter. Get that answer. Then we're going to take that answer and divide it by 2. And when you do that, you end up with a -4.438. Again, we want to round it to 2 decimal points. We look at the third number, it's greater than 5. So that means that our second number needs to be rounded up. So our first answer is -0.44. Let's take a look at our negative answer. So we're going to do 5 minus the square root of 17, and then we're going to take all of that and divide it by 2. It looks like I made a mistake on my key here. I accidentally did a negative here. So go ahead and plug that into your calculator and see what you get. Again, 5 minus the square root of 17, enter, and then divide it by 2. So this answer might be wrong. So go ahead and check that on your calculator when you do it. Let's take a look at a couple of last examples here. So let's take a look at number 5. So for number 5, our A is equal to 1, our B is equal to 6, and our C is equal to 9. So now we're going to go ahead and plug that into the quadratic formula. So x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times our a times our c all over 2 times our a. So again, I always want you guys to simplify underneath the radical first. And when you simplify underneath the radical, you end up getting 0 for this one. -6 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 2 times 1, which is 2. Well, the square root of 0 is just 0. So really all we have is -6 divided by 2. When it's 0, that entire part goes away. So -6 divided by 2 is a -3. So for this one, we only have one answer. That's okay. We'll talk about what that means here in a second. So let's take a look at number 6 now. So for number 6, we want to do our A, our B, and our C. Our A is equal to 1 because the coefficient with the square term is 1. Our B is equal to -2, and our C is 3. So let's go ahead and plug that in. So x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so again, we want to simplify underneath the radical. Well, when we simplify just this part underneath the radical, again, you can plug that exactly into your calculator. You end up getting a -8. Well, think about it. Whenever you square a number, it comes out positive, right? So the square root of a negative number doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. So whenever we get a square root of a negative number, we need to write no solution. Okay, when we get a square root of a negative number, there is no answer for us. So what is all this crazy stuff telling us? Let's take a look. So when you have two answers, that means you're crossing the x-axis 2 times. So for example, on numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, we got 2 answers. So the parabola is crossing the x-axis at 2 points. For number 5, we only got 1 answer. It crossed the x-axis 1 time. That's why we only have one answer, because our vertex is sitting on the x-axis. So we're only crossing the x-axis once. Now on number 6, we got no solution. So when we got no solution, that means that our our parabola is never going to cross the x-axis. That's why no solution exists, because it's not crossing it. So that concludes your notes today. Thanks for listening.